The rain was coming down hard that Friday evening when Lisa hurried through the back door of Romano's restaurant. Her uniform was slightly damp and she was already 5 minutes late for her shift. She quickly tied her apron and checked her reflection in the small mirror by the staff lockers. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of another sleepless night, but she forced a smile. Her customers didn't need to know about her problems. "Lisa, thank goodness you're here," called out Tony, the manager, as he rushed past carrying a stack of menus. "We're completely booked tonight and the weather's driving everyone indoors." She nodded and grabbed her notepad. This was exactly what she needed. A busy night meant good tips, and good tips meant she could finally pay the electric bill that had been sitting on her kitchen table for 2 weeks. Her 8-year-old daughter Mia was staying with their neighbor Mrs. Chen again tonight, while Lisa worked her double shift. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than leaving her alone. The main dining room was buzzing with conversation and the gentle clinking of silverware against plates. Romano's wasn't just any restaurant. It was the kind of place where business people made deals over expensive wine and couples celebrated anniversaries. Lisa had been working here for 3 years now, ever since she moved to the city. She knew every table, every regular customer, and exactly how to make people feel welcome. As she made her rounds, taking orders and refilling water glasses, she noticed a man sitting alone at table 12 in the corner. He was probably in his 50s, wearing a simple black sweater and jeans. Nothing flashy about him, but there was something different in the way he carried himself. Most people who ate alone at Romano's were either on business calls or scrolling through their phones. This man was just sitting quietly, watching the room with genuine interest. Lisa approached his table with her usual warm smile. "Good evening, I'm Lisa, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man looked up and smiled back. There was kindness in his eyes that reminded her of her late father. "Just water for now, please. I'm still deciding what I'm in the mood for." "Take your time," Lisa said, filling his glass. "The special tonight is our homemade lasagna with a side of garlic bread. It's my personal favorite." "You know what? That sounds perfect. I trust your recommendation." As Lisa walked back to the kitchen to place his order, she found herself humming softly. The restaurant always played classical music in the background. Nothing too loud, just enough to create a peaceful atmosphere. Tonight they were playing some beautiful piano pieces, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to the melodies. When she returned with the man's salad, he was looking toward the corner of the restaurant, where an elegant black piano sat. It was Romano's, pride and joy, though it was rarely used except for special occasions. "Do you play?" he asked, nodding toward the piano. Lisa paused, her hand tightening slightly around the water pitcher. "Oh no, well, I used to a long time ago, but that was different life." "Music never really leaves you," the man said gently. "It just waits." Something about his words made Lisa's heart skip a beat, but she quickly brushed off the feeling. She had learned not to dwell on the past. "I'll go check on your lasagna," she said, eager to change the subject. Throughout the evening, Lisa found herself stopping by table 12 more often than necessary. The man, she still didn't know his name, was easy to talk to. He asked about the restaurant, about the neighborhood, about her favorite dishes on the menu. Unlike most customers who were focused on their own conversations or business, he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. "You've been working here long?" he asked as she refilled his coffee cup. "About 3 years now. It's a good job. The people are nice, and I like helping customers have a pleasant evening." "You're good at it," he said. "You have a way of making people feel comfortable." Lisa felt a warmth spread through her chest. Compliments about her work always meant more to her than people realized. She worked hard to be good at this job, to provide for Mia, to build a stable life for them both. As the evening wore on and the restaurant began to empty, Lisa noticed that the man was in no hurry to leave. He had finished his meal an hour ago, but continued sipping his coffee and watching the remaining customers. She was wiping down tables nearby when she heard him speak. "The music tonight has been particularly beautiful." Lisa looked up. "Mr. Romano has excellent taste. He chooses all the background music himself. That piece that just played, Chopin's Nocturne, it's one of my favorites. Lisa's cloth stopped moving across the table. She knew that piece. She had played it countless times years ago when her fingers knew every key and every note came as naturally as breathing. You know classical music? She asked, trying to keep her voice casual. My late wife loved it. She used to say that music was the language the heart spoke when words weren't enough. There was a sadness in his voice that Lisa recognized immediately. She knew that tone, the way people sounded when they talked about someone they had loved and lost. She sounds like she was a wonderful person, Lisa said softly. She was. She would have liked you, I think. She always appreciated people who worked hard and treated others with kindness. As Lisa continued cleaning, she noticed that every time a piano piece played, she unconsciously slowed down her movements. Her body seemed to remember rhythms that her mind had tried to forget. The man noticed too. He watched her with curious eyes, as if he could see something she was trying to hide. The last customers were settling their bills when the man finally asked for his check. Lisa brought it over, expecting him to pay and leave like everyone else. Instead, he looked at her thoughtfully. Lisa, can I ask you something? She nodded, wondering what he wanted to know. Earlier, when you said you used to play piano in a different life, what did you mean by that? The question hit her like a gentle wave, bringing back memories she had carefully tucked away. She could almost feel the smooth keys beneath her fingertips, could almost hear the sound of applause from a concert hall that felt like it belonged to someone else's story. It's not important now, she said quietly. That was a long time ago. But as she walked away to help the last remaining customers, she found herself humming again, and this time, the melody seemed to be humming back. The restaurant was getting quieter now. Most of the dinner crowd had left, and only a few tables still had customers finishing their desserts and coffee. Lisa was wiping down the counter when she heard her name being called softly. Lisa? The man at table 12 was gesturing for her to come over. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm curious about something. She walked over, carrying her cleaning cloth. What can I help you with? I've been watching you all evening, and every time the piano music plays, you do this thing. He smiled, gently. You move your fingers like you're playing along. It's very subtle, but I noticed it. Lisa felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't realized she was doing that. I guess old habits are hard to break. So you really did play? It wasn't just being polite when I asked earlier. She sighed and sat down in the chair across from him. Tony wouldn't mind. The evening rush was over, and she had been on her feet for 6 hours straight. Yeah, I played. More than played, actually. It used to be my whole world. The man leaned forward slightly, genuinely interested. Tell me about it if you don't mind sharing. Lisa looked toward the piano in the corner. Even from across the room, she could see her reflection in its shiny black surface. For a moment, she was 17 again, sitting at a similar piano in a practice room that smelled like old wood and rosin. I started playing when I was 4. She began slowly. My mom found this old upright piano at a garage sale. It was missing a few keys and completely out of tune, but she bought it for $20 because she thought I might like it. And did you? I was obsessed. I would sit at that broken piano for hours, making up songs and pretending I was performing. In some grand concert hall. My parents thought it was cute at first, just a phase that would pass. The man nodded, encouraging her to continue. But it didn't pass. By the time I was 7, I was begging for real lessons. We didn't have much money. My dad worked at the post office and my mom was a school secretary. But they found a way. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly lady down the street, used to give lessons for $10 an hour. She was strict but kind, and she saw something in me that I didn't even know was there. Lisa paused, remembering those early lessons. Mrs. Patterson's house always smelled like lavender, and she had a cat named Beethoven who would sit on top of the piano during lessons. What happened next? The man asked gently. I got better. A lot better, actually. By middle school, I was winning local competitions. By high school, I was playing with the city youth orchestra. My teachers kept telling me I had a gift, that I could go places with my music. She could see the pride in her parents' eyes when she played at her high school graduation. The way her father had tears streaming down his face when she finished her solo piece. They were right, weren't they? Lisa nodded. I auditioned for music schools during my senior year. Juilliard, Curtis, New England Conservatory, all the top places. I never thought I'd actually get in. Kids like me, from small towns with garage sale pianos, don't usually end up at schools like that. But you did get in. Full scholarship to Juilliard. I remember the day the letter came. My mom screamed so loud the neighbors came running over, thinking something was wrong. My dad called in sick to work just so he could take me out to celebrate. The memory was bittersweet. That had been one of the happiest days of her life. So, you went to New York? I did. 18 years old, never been more than 50 miles from home, and suddenly I was living in Manhattan studying with some of the best piano teachers in the world. It was terrifying and amazing at the same time. Lisa remembered her tiny dorm room, the constant sound of music coming from practice rooms at all hours, the way her fingers would ache after 8-hour practice sessions. The first year was incredible. Hard, but incredible. I was learning so much, playing pieces I had only dreamed of tackling. My technique improved every week. I made friends with other students who understood what it meant to live and breathe music. It sounds wonderful. It was. For a while. Lisa's voice grew quieter. The second year was different. The pressure was intense. Everyone there was talented. We had all been the best in our hometowns, the stars of our high schools. But at Juilliard, being good wasn't enough. You had to be exceptional. She remembered the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the way her hands would shake before important performances. I was handling it, though. My grades were good. My teachers were pleased with my progress. I was even being considered for some prestigious competitions. What changed? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, watching a couple at a nearby table share a piece of chocolate cake. I met someone. David. He was studying violin, 2 years ahead of me. He was brilliant and charming and everything I thought I wanted. We started dating in the spring of my sophomore year. The man waited patiently while she gathered her thoughts. I found out I was pregnant at the end of that semester. I was 19, broke, living on financial aid, and completely unprepared to be a mother. David. She paused, the old hurt still there after all these years. David suggested I handle it quietly and keep focusing on my career. When I told him I couldn't do that, he made it clear that fatherhood wasn't part of his plans. Lisa remembered that conversation. They were sitting in Central Park and David had looked at her like she was ruining both their lives. So what did you do? I dropped out, packed up my dorm room, said goodbye to my teachers, and came back home. My parents were supportive, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes. All those years of sacrifice, all those dreams, and I was throwing it away. You weren't throwing it away, you were making a choice? Maybe. It felt like failure at the time. I had Mia 9 months later and she was perfect, worth everything. But I had to find a way to support us. I took whatever jobs I could get, retail, cleaning offices, eventually waiting tables. Lisa looked around the restaurant. I've been doing this for years now, moving from city to city, trying to find better opportunities, better schools for Mia. We ended up here 3 years ago and it's been good, stable. Do you miss it? The music? The question hit her like a physical blow. She felt tears threatening to form and blinked them back quickly. Every single day. Sometimes I hear a piece of music and my hands literally ache to play it. I catch myself humming along to songs, fingering the melody on whatever surface is nearby. But I can't afford lessons to get back in shape and I can't afford a piano. Even if I could, when would I practice? Between work and taking care of Mia, there's barely time to sleep. When was the last time you actually played? Lisa thought about it. The day before I left school. There was this old practice room in the basement that no one liked to use because the piano was slightly out of tune. I went down there and played for hours. Chopin, Bach, some pieces I had written myself. I knew it was the last time, so I tried to memorize everything. The feel of the keys, the sound of the sustain pedal, the way the music seemed to come from somewhere deep inside me. She wiped her eyes quickly with her apron. I'm sorry. I don't usually talk about this stuff. Most people don't understand. The man reached across the table and gently touched her hand. I understand more than you know. Lisa stared at the man across from her, trying to understand what he meant by those words. Before she could ask, Tony appeared beside their table with a gentle smile. Lisa, don't worry about the other tables. Jenny can handle the last few customers. Why don't you take a break? You've been working non-stop tonight. She nodded gratefully and looked back at the mysterious customer. I still don't know your name. Robert, he said simply. And I have a confession to make, Lisa. I didn't come here tonight just for dinner. Her stomach tightened slightly. In her experience, when customers made confessions, it usually meant trouble. What do you mean? I've been coming here for the past few weeks. Always sitting at different tables. Always when you're working. I've been watching how you interact. With music. How your whole body changes when certain pieces play. Lisa felt a mix of confusion and slight alarm. Why would you do that? Robert held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. Please don't worry. I'm not some strange person with bad intentions. I'm here because of my wife, the one I mentioned earlier who passed away 2 years ago. He pulled out his wallet and showed Lisa a photo of a beautiful Asian woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Her name was Elena. She was a music teacher and she had this incredible gift for spotting talent in people. She used to say that real musicians never lose their connection to music, even when life takes them in different directions. Lisa looked at the photo, seeing genuine love and loss in Robert's eyes. Elena always dreamed of opening a music school, not just for wealthy kids who could afford expensive lessons, but for people who had talent but couldn't access traditional training, people who maybe had to make hard choices but never lost their musical soul. That sounds like a beautiful dream, Lisa said softly. She made me promise that if I ever found the right person, someone with real talent who just needed a second chance, I would help them. She believed music was too precious to be wasted. Robert looked toward the piano in the corner, then back at Lisa. I think Elena would have loved you, and I think she would have seen in you what I see. Which is what, exactly? Someone who never really left music, someone who just got separated from it for a while. Lisa felt her heart racing. Robert, I appreciate what you're saying, but you don't understand. It's been over 8 years since I've really played. My technique is probably terrible now. I can't even remember all the pieces I used to know. Music isn't just about technique, Robert said gently. It's about the connection between your heart and your hands, and that connection doesn't disappear. Tony walked by their table again, and Robert called out to him. Excuse me, Tony. I have an unusual request. The manager stopped and looked curious. What can I help you with? Would it be possible for Lisa to play your piano for a few minutes? I know it's an unusual ask, but I'd be happy to cover any overtime costs or inconvenience. Tony looked surprised but not upset. The piano? Sure, I don't see why not. We sometimes have local musicians play during our weekend events. Lisa, you play piano? Lisa felt her cheeks burning. I used to, a long time ago. But really, it's okay. I don't need to. Actually, Tony interrupted. That would be wonderful. That piano doesn't get used nearly enough. It's a beautiful instrument. Now Lisa felt trapped. 3 pairs of eyes were looking at her expectantly, and she could feel panic rising in her chest. I really don't think this is a good idea, she said quickly. I haven't played in years. I'd probably embarrass myself and disturb the other customers. Robert leaned forward with understanding in his eyes. Lisa, what's the worst thing that could happen? You play a piece. Maybe it's not perfect, and life goes on. But what if it's better than you think? What if your hands remember more than your fear is telling you? She looked around the restaurant. There were only about 6 customers left. A young couple sharing dessert, 2 business partners finishing their wine, and an elderly woman reading a book while sipping tea. None of them looked like they would judge her harshly if she made mistakes. I don't even know what I would play, she said weakly. What was your favorite piece when you were studying? Robert asked, Without thinking, Lisa answered, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. I played it at my high school graduation. It was the last piece I performed before. She trailed off. Before your life changed, Robert finished gently. Maybe it's time for your life to change again. Lisa felt tears threatening again. The fear was real. What if her fingers didn't remember? What if the years of hard work and exhaustion had taken away the one thing she had ever been truly good at? But underneath the fear was something else. A longing so deep it felt like physical hunger. Her hands literally ached to touch those keys, to feel music flowing through her fingertips again. I'm scared, she whispered. Good, Robert said. That means it matters to you. Tony had been listening to their conversation, and now he spoke up. Lisa, in the 3 years you've worked here, I've never seen you ask for anything for yourself. You cover shifts for other people. You stay late when we need help. You treat every customer like family. If you want to play our piano, it would be my honor. The elderly woman at the nearby table looked up from her book. Excuse me, dear. I couldn't help overhearing. Are you going to play for us? How lovely. Suddenly, the small group of remaining customers was looking toward their table with interest and encouragement. Lisa realized that somehow, without meaning to, she had become the center of attention. She started, then stopped. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Robert stood up and extended his hand to her. Elena used to tell her students that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing something important despite the fear. Lisa looked at his outstretched hand, then at the piano sitting quietly in the corner. Its black surface gleamed under the soft restaurant lighting, and for a moment, she could almost hear it calling to her. What if I've forgotten how? She asked one more time. Then, we'll all learn something together, Robert said simply. But what if you haven't? The restaurant had grown quiet. Even Jenny, who was clearing tables across the room, had stopped working to watch. The young couple was holding hands, looking at Lisa with encouraging smiles. The business partners had pushed back from their table, clearly interested to see what would happen next. Lisa thought about Mia, probably asleep at Mrs. Chen's house by now. What would her daughter think if she knew her mother was too scared to try something she had once loved? What kind of example was she setting? She thought about her parents, who had sacrificed so much to give her opportunities. They would want her to try, wouldn't they? Most of all, she thought about that girl who had played for hours on a broken garage sale piano, who had dreamed of filling concert halls with beautiful music. That girl was still inside her somewhere. Lisa took a deep breath and placed her hand in Robert's. Okay, she said quietly. But if this is terrible, you're all buying dinner here for the next month to make up for traumatizing you. Everyone laughed, and the tension in the room shifted from nervousness to anticipation. Robert helped her stand, and together they walked toward the piano. With each step, Lisa felt like she was walking back toward a part of herself she had buried long ago. The piano bench was exactly the right height. The lid was already open, revealing pristine black and white keys that seemed to shimmer in the light. Lisa sat down slowly and placed her hands in her lap, staring at the keyboard. Take your time, Robert said softly, standing beside the piano. She lifted her right hand and gently pressed middle C. The note rang out clear and true, filling the quiet restaurant with its pure sound. And in that moment, Lisa knew she was home. Lisa sat frozen at the piano bench, her hands hovering just above the keys. The single note she had pressed still seemed to echo in the quiet restaurant, and now everyone was waiting for what came next. She could feel their eyes on her, not judgmental but hopeful, and somehow that made it both easier and harder. Her fingers trembled slightly as she placed them on the keys in the opening position for Chopin's Nocturne. She had played this piece hundreds of times years ago, but right now, her muscle memory felt like it was buried under layers of forgotten time. Just breathe, she whispered to herself. She pressed the first few notes, and they came out hesitant and uncertain. Her left hand fumbled slightly on the bass line, and she winced at the small mistake. Part of her wanted to stop right there, to apologize and walk away before embarrassing herself further. But then she heard Robert's gentle voice from beside the piano. "It's okay, there's no rush." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find that place inside herself where the music lived. She thought about those hours as a child at the garage sale piano, when playing felt as natural as breathing. She thought about her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who used to say, "Don't play with your fingers, dear. Play with your heart." She started, again this time letting herself feel the melody instead of just trying to remember it. The opening phrase flowed out, still not perfect but with more confidence. Her right hand found the beautiful singing melody line while her left hand provided the gentle, rocking accompaniment. As she continued, something magical began to happen. Her hands started to remember, not just the notes, but the feeling of the music. The way Chopin had crafted each phrase to tell a story, the way the melody rose and fell like someone breathing deeply in their sleep. The young couple at their table had stopped eating dessert entirely. The woman was leaning forward, her hand over her heart, completely captivated by the gentle beauty of the piece. Her boyfriend was watching Lisa with amazement, as if he couldn't believe this was the same waitress who had served them dinner an hour earlier. The two businessmen had pushed their chairs back and were listening with the kind of attention people usually reserved for concert halls. One of them pulled out his phone, not to text or check social media, but to record this unexpected moment of beauty in their ordinary Friday evening. Even Jenny, who was supposed to be clearing tables, had stopped working completely. She was standing by the kitchen door with a stack of plates in her hands, afraid to move and break the spell that had fallen over the restaurant. Lisa herself was feeling the transformation. As the first section of the nocturne unfolded, her posture straightened. Her shoulders relaxed. The tight knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years. Pure joy. This was who she used to be. This was who she still was, underneath all the worry and exhaustion and responsibility. The melody moved into its more complex middle section, where Chopin's genius really showed itself. Here the music became more passionate, more demanding. Lisa's right hand had to navigate intricate runs and delicate ornaments while her left hand maintained the steady, dreamy foundation. For a moment she worried that this section might be too much for her rusty technique. But as her fingers found the patterns they had practiced thousands of times years ago, she realized that some things truly don't leave you. They just wait, patient and faithful, for the right moment to return. The elderly woman at the corner table had tears streaming down her cheeks. She was remembering her own youth, her own dreams, her own moments of beauty that had sustained her through decades of ordinary life. Music had this power. It could reach across time and touch places in the heart that people had almost forgotten existed. Tony had emerged from the kitchen and was standing with his arms crossed, not in annoyance, but in pure admiration. He had owned this restaurant for 15 years, and he thought he knew all his employees well. But he had never imagined that Lisa, his reliable, hard-working waitress, carried this kind of magic inside her. As Lisa moved into the final section of the piece, her playing became more confident, more expressive. She began to add her own subtle interpretations, a slight slowing here, a gentle emphasis there. These weren't the markings of a rusty amateur, but the choices of a true musician who understood the soul of the music. The nocturne built toward its emotional climax, where Chopin takes the simple opening melody and transforms it into something transcendent. Lisa's right hand soared above the accompaniment, each note crystal clear and full of meaning. She was no longer just playing the notes on the page. She was telling a story, and what a story it was. It was the story of dreams deferred but not destroyed, of love that changes everything even when it comes with sacrifice, of strength found in the most unexpected moments, of the way beauty can survive even in the hardest circumstances. Robert was watching with tears in his eyes, thinking about Elena and how right she had been about recognizing talent. His wife would have loved this moment, would have loved seeing someone reconnect with their gift in such a profound way. The music began its gentle descent toward the ending, and Lisa found herself playing with a depth of emotion she couldn't have accessed when she was 19. Back then, she had the technique and the talent, but she hadn't lived enough to understand what Chopin was really trying to say in this piece. Now, as a mother who had sacrificed her dreams for love, as a woman who had worked multiple jobs to provide for her child, as someone who had learned that life was both harder and more beautiful than she had ever imagined, she could give the music the emotional weight it deserved. The final phrase approached. Those last few notes that would bring this magical moment to an end. Lisa played them with exquisite tenderness, letting each one ring fully before moving to the next. The last note hung in the air like a prayer, pure and perfect and achingly beautiful. Then, silence. For a long moment, no one moved. No one wanted to bray. The spell that had transformed Romano's restaurant from an ordinary dining room into something sacred. Lisa kept her hands on the keys, hardly believing what had just happened. She had not only remembered how to play, she had played better than she ever remembered playing before. All those years of living, of struggling, of loving deeply, had made her not just a better person but a better musician. The elderly woman was the first to start clapping, her applause soft but heartfelt. Then the young couple joined in, then the businessman, then Tony and Jenny. Soon everyone in the restaurant was applauding, not the polite clapping you might hear at the end of a meal, but the kind of sustained emotional applause reserved for moments that touch the soul. Lisa turned around on the piano bench, her face glowing with a mixture of joy, surprise, and overwhelming emotion. She had tears on her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition. She was meeting herself again after 8 long years of separation. That was incredible, the young woman called out from her table. Absolutely beautiful. I've never heard anything like that, one of the businessmen said, shaking his head in amazement. Tony was beaming like a proud father. Lisa, in all my years in this business, that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. But it was Robert who understood most deeply what had just happened. As the applause continued, he stepped closer to Lisa and spoke quietly so only she could hear. Elena always said that music chooses its people, not the other way around, and it never lets them go, no matter how far they might wander. Lisa looked up at him, her heart full of gratitude and possibility and hope. I thought it was gone forever, she whispered. It was never gone. Robert said gently. It was just waiting for you to be ready to come home. Lisa was still sitting at the piano bench, overwhelmed by what had just happened. The applause had died down, but people were still, looking at her with amazement. She felt like she was in a dream, afraid that if she moved too quickly she might wake up and find herself back to just being a waitress who used to play piano. Robert sat down in the chair beside the piano, his eyes bright with something that looked like excitement mixed with determination. Lisa, I need to tell you something important. Something I should have mentioned earlier, but I wanted to hear you play first. She turned to face him fully, still feeling shaky from the performance. What is it? My full name is Robert Chen. You might have heard of Chen Technologies? Lisa's eyes widened. Chen Technologies was one of the biggest software companies in the country. She had seen their logo on computers and phones everywhere. You mean, you're that Robert Chen, the billionaire? He smiled modestly. I prefer to think of myself as someone who got lucky in business and now has the opportunity to do something meaningful with that luck. But why are you here? Why were you watching me? Robert pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was the same picture of Elena he had shown earlier, but this time Lisa could see she was standing in front of a beautiful building with a sign that read, Future Home of Elena Chen Music Academy. This building has been sitting empty for 2 years. While I tried to figure out how to honor Elena's dream properly, she always wanted to create a music school, but not just any school. She wanted a place where talented people who had been separated from music could find their way back to it. Lisa stared at the photo. The building was gorgeous. Red brick with large windows. The kind of place that looked like it was meant for making music. Elena believed that the most meaningful music comes from people who have lived real lives. who understand struggle and sacrifice and love. She thought that someone who had given up everything for their child might actually be a better teacher than someone who had never faced that kind of choice. "I don't understand what you're asking me," Lisa said quietly, though her heart was starting to race. "I'm offering you a job, Lisa, as the head piano instructor at the Elena Chen Music Academy. We want to open in 6 months, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather have leading our piano program." Lisa felt the room spinning slightly. "You're offering me a job? Based on one song? Based on watching you for weeks? Based on seeing how you treat people? How you work harder than anyone should have to work? How you've never lost your connection to music even after 8 years away from it? And yes, based on the most beautiful performance of Chopin I've heard in years." Tony, who had been listening nearby, came over with a huge grin on his face. "Lisa, did I hear that right? You're being offered a job as a music teacher?" I think so." Lisa looked back at Robert. "But I don't have a teaching degree. I never finished college. I can't even afford to keep a piano in tune, let alone teach other people. Elena always said the best teachers are the ones who remember what it feels like to struggle with music. You don't need a piece of paper to prove you understand how to help people find their musical voice." The young couple who had been watching her performance came over to their table. "Excuse me," the woman said shyly. "We just wanted to say that was the most beautiful thing we've ever heard. You're incredibly talented." "Thank you," Lisa said, still trying to process everything that was happening. After they walked away, Robert continued. "The salary would be $80,000 a year, plus health benefits for you and Mia. The school would also provide you with a piano for your home, and we'd cover any additional training or workshops you wanted to attend to refresh your skills." Lisa's mouth fell open. She was currently making about $25,000 a year between her 2 jobs, and she had no health insurance. $80,000? Elena always believed that if you want good teachers, you have to pay them well enough that they can focus on teaching instead of worrying about money. But what about Mia? I'd need to find childcare, and she'd have to change schools. Actually, that's another part of Elena's vision. The academy will offer lessons for children too. Mia could take piano lessons or violin or whatever instrument interests her, all free of charge for employees' families. Lisa felt tears starting. Again. "You're serious about this?" "Completely serious. I've been planning this for 2 years, Lisa. I've been looking for the right person to help me build something that would make Elena proud. After tonight, I know I've found her." The elderly woman from the corner table approached them slowly, leaning on her cane. "Excuse me, dear. I hope you don't mind an old woman interfering, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you really being offered a job as a piano teacher?" "It seems like it," Lisa said, still in shock. "Well, if you're half as good at teaching as you are at playing, you'll change a lot of lives. Music saved my soul when I was your age, and teachers like you are the reason music survives in this world." After she walked away, Robert looked at Lisa seriously. "I know this is a lot to take in. You don't have to decide tonight. Take some time, think about it, talk to Mia. What would I be teaching exactly? Piano lessons for all ages and skill levels. Elena wanted the academy to serve everyone, kids who were just starting, adults who always wanted to learn, and people like you who needed to find their way back to music. You'd have complete freedom to design your own curriculum." Lisa looked around the restaurant. Tony was wiping down tables with a big smile on his face. Jenny was finishing up with the last customers. This place had been her world for 3 years, and it was a good job with good people. But it wasn't a life. It was just survival. "I have so many questions," she said. "Ask me anything." "What if I'm not as good as you think I am? What if I've been away from music too long? What if I can't actually teach?" Robert smiled. "Elena used to say that the people who worry about whether they're good enough are usually the ones who care enough to become great. Besides, we'd start you with some refresher courses, maybe some time with a mentor teacher. You wouldn't be thrown in completely alone." Lisa thought about Mia, who was 8 years old and had never had the chance to take music lessons. She thought, About her daughter coming home from school to find her mother practicing piano, instead of collapsed on the couch from exhaustion. Where is the school located? About 20 minutes from here in the Arts District downtown. There's a great elementary school just 2 blocks away that has an excellent music program. Mia could walk to the academy after school and do her homework. There while you teach. You've really thought of everything. Elena was very thorough in her planning. She left detailed notes about her vision for the school. One thing she wrote was, "Find teachers who understand that music isn't just about playing the right notes. Find teachers who know that music can heal broken dreams." Lisa was quiet for a long moment, looking at her hands. They were the hands of a waitress, a little rough from carrying plates with small cuts from kitchen work. But tonight, for 20 minutes, they had been the hands of a pianist again. When would I start? The academy opens in September. That gives us the summer to get everything ready, to do some publicity, to prepare the space. You'd start getting paid in July so you could focus on preparation instead of working double shifts. Robert, why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the photo of Elena on his phone. The night before Elena passed away, she made me promise something. She said that if I ever met someone who reminded me of why we fell in love with music in the first place, I should move heaven and earth to give them a chance. And you think I'm that person? Lisa, I've heard some of the best pianists in the world perform in concert halls that cost millions of dollars to build. But I have never heard anyone play with more heart than you did tonight. Sitting at a restaurant, piano after 8 years away from music. Elena would have loved you immediately. Lisa stood up from the piano bench and walked to the large window that looked out onto the street. Rain was still falling, but lighter now, and the streetlights made everything look soft and hopeful. She thought about the girl who had played garage sale pianos and dreamed of concert halls. She thought about the young woman who had given up everything for love. She thought about the mother who had worked herself to exhaustion to provide for her child. All of those people were her, and all of those people deserved this chance. She turned back to Robert with tears in her eyes, but a smile on her face. When do we start planning? 6 months later, Lisa stood in front of her first class at the Elena Chen Music Academy. She was wearing a simple black dress and had a small photo of Elena on her piano, a reminder of the woman whose dream had given her this second chance. Her students ranged from a 6-year-old who could barely reach the pedals to a 70-year-old, retired teacher who had always wanted to learn Chopin. Mia sat in the back of the room practicing violin with her own teacher before Lisa's class ended. As she looked at the faces of her students, some nervous, some excited, all hopeful, Lisa knew that Elena had been right about one thing. The best music teachers were the ones who remembered what it felt like to dream, to struggle, and to find their way back home. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play.